Hey everybody, still looking for the right setup in my house. So for right now, we're getting basement walls and the per couch. So welcome, I am Kari the Mortician, randomly jumping on, going live. Wasn't able to the end of last week, and so happy Labor Day. Here we are. Hey Amber, Christier, is that how you pronounced your name? That's a cool name. And hey, Heidi. So welcome. We'll see what this turns into. I don't have a lot planned to talk about. So hopefully you guys bring some good questions today. Talking about things that die, my fridge died yesterday. So the last 2 days have been a scramble of trying to figure that out. If you've tried to buy appliances anytime recently, it's like a 3-week, if not way more, wait to even get an appliance. So it's been a hot minute of craziness for me. But welcome, Sharon, to your first live. Hi, guys. So the lead question that was asked was, am I too old for mortuary school? I get this question actually often, and I'm sure I've answered it a million times, but I'm going to totally answer it again. And I came up with kind of a new analogy for it today. So if you go to a mortuary school right now and look at the students, you're going to find such a diverse mix of ages, ethnicities, genders. It is predominantly female right now going into mortuary school, which is awesome. But you are going to get a lot, and I mean a lot, of second career individuals, or sometimes first career, that they've never done their work, and women per se that have started families, kids are grown, and they're now wanting to start into the workplace in their mid-30s, early 40s. And this is the career that they're kind of pulled towards. Not uncommon. You are not the only person having these feelings and in the middle of your life. I think it's kind of like having kids. So what my ex-husband and I always said about kids, like, sure, we could have had them younger, and had way more energy, but been not as equipped emotionally, financially, just maturity wise and patience. So there are some pros and cons to that. However, we waited till we were older. We had them. I was in my mid-30s when I had the girls. And so I physically was taken back probably a little more than I would have been when I was in my 20s. But we were more financially sound, more mature, had more patience, more of a support structure set than I probably would have in my 20s. Same thing, I think, with going to mortuary school. You can go younger. Maybe you don't have as much financial built up. You're going to have way more energy to do all the work going into the business and through college than you're going to have later. But you don't have always the maturity level that you might have into your 40s and such. So you may go to mortuary school and do all the normal college things that you do going off to college, which you should. You should have fun. But you may make choices that aren't your best choices to make at that moment. So it just really depends on you and your situation. And now there's a lot of online. So I'm going to now look at your questions, guys. I haven't looked at a single one while I was on that kind of word vomit. When my dad died, the sales pitch from the funeral home I used said the caskets had a lifetime warranty. That was just ridiculous. Have you ever heard the sales pitch before? So caskets do come with a warranty. Urns come with a warranty. It's not the kind of warranty you're thinking. It's not like, oh, if 20 years from now I go down and dig up the casket, I expect it to be perfect. It's more like if the handle falls off while you're carrying the person out to the hearse, they're going to back that up, or things of that nature. I'm going to do a video coming up on the little warranty card that comes with caskets, so you can see some of what is actually said on those warranty cards with urns and caskets, because it is kind of interesting. And yeah, I get it. Like a lifetime warranty on a casket, there's no life that's going in the casket. So where's the irony in all of that? My mom passed 2 weeks ago. The funeral home did a wonderful job. Sorry, Lori. So sorry that your mom and you had the heartbreak. But I'm glad you had a good experience with that funeral home. When going to funerals in the past, I always get nervous, maybe because of the deceased is shown. Will I recognize them? Any tips on this? It's such a broad question, because there's probably a lot to dive into there, like to almost analyze it. But what moment makes you the most anxious? Walking into the funeral home, greeting people, going up to the casket, watching the video, getting sad, crying. Sometimes people don't want to go and they think it must do with the dead body. But sometimes it's just actually that anxiety of, what am I going to say to the family? What am I going to say to people? I didn't know them that well, or I didn't do that. Sometimes it's that social anxiety, not seeing the actual dead person. So there could be some deeper levels to that. And maybe where does it stem from? People jumping, does it make it less painful to watch? Something about 9/11. Sorry, I want to go back to that question. Does dealing with death daily numb you to tragedy? Now that 9/11 is coming up with the videos of the towers, the people jumping, and everything popping up again, does it make it less painful to watch? I think like a lot of Americans, when you see some of those images over and over, you are a little desensitized to that specific, but then new ones come out and it takes you right back. That's what my feeling, and I have found. I still the one of the man falling upside down, and you just stare at it and you wonder what was in his mind. Was there anything in his mind? Was he at peace? Did he come to terms with what was happening in that quick moment? You think about those, like as planes are going down and people are on them, what are they truly, how can you prepare? You can't prepare yourself for that moment. You truly, how could you? It's kind of like death. You can't prepare yourself for something you've never done. So in any death scenario, but something like that, I can't even imagine. So just on this sort of, but not even remotely close. So I was on an airplane recently when I flew to Pittsburgh. Worst turbulence I've ever had. People were screaming. The bags did not drop from the ceiling, thank Jesus. But it was really bad. And I almost reached over and grabbed the person and their hand next to me because I just wanted to be close to somebody. So a lot of that scenario, like what if you didn't know anybody and you were kind of by yourself, or I don't know, that's the thing. And I'm an overthinker, if you guys don't already know. So a lot of those scenarios I've overthought, but there's always new and kind of heart-wrenching moments photos that come out every year. Can you explain coffin birth? Coffin birth is when you have a pregnant woman who goes into decomposition and gas and air build up in her abdomen, and the baby is pressed out because the room in the cavity of her stomach is filled with gas and air. It's very simple. This doesn't happen if the person has been embalmed and things. This is when maybe someone is murdered or killed or dies and they are left for a certain period of time and that gas builds up. Or if they're buried without an autopsy, or potentially with the baby in utero without an autopsy, being embalmed and maybe not well, maybe it could build up, but more than likely it's just those specific little scenarios. It's one of those terms that's super catchy and everybody kind of wants to know what it is, and because it sounds so salacious, I guess. And it's a very, 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 very small percentage that this would ever happen. How do you preserve bodies to last for years? Or is this someone else who does this? Last for years as in how? Do you bury people with diamonds? If the family wants them buried, we would. How does one buy niches? You would go to the cemetery and buy the niche that you want. Blackstone Rookie, yeah, the social anxiety. To me, that's what I found is the biggest when people are actually going to funerals, is that social anxiety is the worst. How do you contain a strong odor from a body as you keep it until the day of a funeral? How and where do you contain it? If the person is so decomposed that the smell is that bad, we don't bring them in the funeral home, and we won't embalm, and we won't do viewing unless you want to do it out in the garage. The smell is so strong and permeates so much that you would take over the building with a smell, and it's fat soluble. Decomposition is so it attaches to fabrics and lingers in the air, and it's hard to get rid of. So at a certain point, you say, "I'm sorry, it's not happening inside the building." Unfortunately, it's just kind of how it is. I had someone send me a news article from, where is this? Is this Utah? Oh, I have to, Idaho. Pocatello police find several bodies, several fetuses in downward funeral home as investigation deepens. So the article is not long, but another funeral home in the news, and that's never going to end well. They've got, you show the pictures on the news where the people are coming out in hazmat suits and, so who knows what they found in there. It's hard for me to comment on news articles because I don't know both sides. I don't know the funeral home side. I don't know what was really found. And I know, just like so many of us, the news articles are like this much truth, and the rest is like smoke and mirrors or just falsehoods when it comes to so many things. And I think because of that, I don't buy into a lot of that media because you don't know what is truth. Hey, Casey, welcome. Is there a difference between a columbarium and a niche? A niche would be in a columbarium. The niche is where you actually put the urn, and the columbarium is the large receptacle. It's kind of like a crypt and a mausoleum. The crypt is the actual chamber that the person is put in, and the mausoleum is the building. Whether it's just for one person or not, that's the full-size building that the person is put in. You still seeing a lot of COVID deaths? No. We went months without any that I had seen, and then had a couple. We've also had deaths at different funeral homes around the area. There's been deaths from complications from the vaccine. So we see deaths from all different angles and different reasons. But no, there has not been an uptick really of COVID deaths that we've seen per se. So since we don't, what do you do instead? In terms of avalanche one, you mean in terms of like taking care of the person if we don't bring them in the body? Are you still talking about that? Is it true that the embalming process to remove the fluid starts with draining the blood first, then using certain types of embalming fluid to remove the stiffness? No, Lil J. Go check out my embalming videos. The blood is not drained out. The blood is pushed out when embalming fluid is pushed in. So the person is not just drained. It's a replacement system inside of them. I'm currently undergoing the basis to prepare me for mortuary school. Awesome, Lil J. That's cool. Does the funeral home you were employed by accept COVID cases? I don't know any funeral homes personally that turned any away. There was absolutely no need to. But there are people who were not comfortable during COVID, and they did turn people away. How do you battle the decomp smell in the prep room? If it's somebody that we actually bring into prep, we just turn on the exhaust fans and embalm very strong. You can put out coffee grounds to absorb some of the smell. There's some specialty mortuary products. There's one that's cherry. I was going to say flavored, but scented. No eating it. That you set out, and it smells amazing. So it just depends. So back to Avalanche's question about if someone smells so badly, what do? You can mask the smell if it's at a certain, but if we don't bring them in the funeral home, they just stay bagged up out in the garage until it's casket or cremation time. And then they're placed in those the casket or the cremation box out in the garage or whatever area, and then taken from there. So sometimes for like a funeral, we would say that they have to have a casket that seals, so that if they want them inside of it at the funeral. Otherwise, we can, after the funeral, take the casket, the empty casket, and go put the person in it and go straight to the cemetery from there. So there are some options depending on the scenario. If a person is wearing a hat and a casket, does it create a problem as you lower and raise the body in the casket? So it depends what kind of hat. Baseball caps, no big deal. But anything with a full brim, you've got to cut down into the pillow to recess it in, because the back has to be flat and the person down in the pillow. So sometimes you can cut the back of the hat off, or you can cut things down on the pillow to set it down in there. So there's a couple different ways to trick around it. I'm going to start mortuary school in November. Is it possible to just work in the prep room, or is it automatically funeral director and prep room? You do have to go through the apprenticeship and do both sides, at least during the apprenticeships. Then you can find a position that allows you to do just one. So you're going to probably be looking for a high volume funeral home where everything is compartmentalized, where arrangers arrange, embalming and care center just do that. Small funeral homes don't usually allow for that. Once you have your skill level base there, you could do trade embalming, where you've just embalm for different places if you want to do that. What do you do when siblings are fighting over who is going to pay and keep the cremains? Well, the pay thing they have to figure out, and the person doesn't get cremated until that payment is in place. Then everyone has equal say over who gets the cremated remains. So a majority of the siblings, if the siblings are the ones in charge of the situation, then the majority has to decide who's going to take the person or what's going to happen to them. And the majority gets to say. Is angel lust a real thing or over-exaggerated? I have no idea what angel lust is. If I knew, I would answer you, because I answer pretty much anything you guys ask. Avalanche, do sealing caskets ever fail to contain the smell? They work pretty well because it's a short-term thing. It's only for, the time of the funeral. So it's typically can be done pretty easily. Are police dogs embalmed for a funeral? So I have heard of embalmers who have embalmed animals. I would have to do some studying if somebody brought in a dog and asked me to embalm them. I think so. Sometimes they may be. Sometimes I need to find that. I have an extreme embalming person to interview. I need a police dog embalmer to interview. How about? Is embalming fluid a health hazard? It's a carcinogen. So I would say yes would be the short answer. What caution do you take when autopsy a person with AIDS, and how many autopsies like that have you done? I don't do autopsies. I am not a medical examiner. That is who does autopsies. How does the fire start up in the ovens? You push the button and the machine and the gas starts, and it's kind of like a fireplace. There's always the little pilot light, and then you turn on the natural gas. Do internal devices have to be removed for cremation? A pacemaker would be removed. Anything with a battery would need to be removed, unless it's one of the little baby ones that they're coming out with. Devices are getting much smaller and they don't have to be, but like pain pumps, anything with a battery needs to be removed. Everything else, metal plates, screws, things like that, are all taken out of the cremated remains after the process is completed. When siblings fight over cremated remains, have you ever split the cremated remains up for each one? Yes, I've split in many different ways. So that's not, we can split people up however they want, but the people that are in charge have to agree on how that's going to happen. Someone else can't just come in and say, oh, I want a portion, and you give it to them. It has to be written out how that's going to be divided. What happens if a person has had their bodies chopped? If someone had murdered, do they put them together? We can if we have all the parts. We can embalm, sew them together, and that's all under clothing. So it's all a show. It's all how the person is presented, how the whole thing is, everything is presented. So you're not going to know a lot of that is going on because it's all kind of behind the scenes. Is trade embalming better than just working at one specific funeral home? Oh yeah. Trade embalming is very good money. It's a horrible, horrible schedule. So unless you can do just enough with maybe one or two places, or get in a group of you that are doing it on a rotation, so then you get weekends off and you get nights off and you have some time to yourself. Otherwise, it can run you crazy ragged. Hey, Sean, I didn't know you were up in Lansing. What is a body covered with a veil? They use the veils, the casket veils, if there's maybe damage to the person, heavy cosmetics, they don't want you to touch them, things of that nature. Katie, that's exciting. You did your first embalming last week. That's so fun. Hello in Switzerland. Do you see water cremation becoming more standard? Even my dog was cremated this way, so much cleaner. I think that we are stupid as a society not to, but there's got to be reasons that it's not, or it's just bureaucracy that we are fighting, to get any changes made. I think it just takes forever to get things put into play. So I think it's just going to take a little while. So we remove after cremation, we remove any metal that is there. We run a magnet over. You can pull out a lot of the big pieces. Every once in a while, a little staple might be missed or something like that. That might have been from the box that the person is in, if there's staples in it. So I do not know how many crematoriums there are. I'd have to look that up for you. Are there any other types of masks besides a respirator mask that can protect you during an embalming? A respirator is probably your best option. You can always wear like an N95 to cut back on a little bit, but you are being exposed to fluids. Janae, thank you. Water cremation? Yes, Jennifer. Go bookmark, head over to my channel to look up water cremation videos. I've got a couple of them over there. Wanda, I'm so glad. Thank you. Could a veil be used because the person had COVID? Possibly. They might want to keep you from touching the person. So could be. If a mother passes away without a will, the children then decide how to split the cremated remains. It worries me. I've been advising family, at the very least, have something written down with their wishes. So Gabby, some of the, like in Michigan, it doesn't matter what's in your will. It doesn't matter. Your family can do anything they want with you. You have no say in it. So there are states like that it does not matter. Your will does not matter when it comes to your disposition. So know the laws in your state and how much control you have over what happens. Do overweight people get cremated longer than skinny people? So people of a certain size do have to be cremated in a more specific way because hey, Dan, thank you. That fat that is in there, all that adipose acts like oil. The oil in it, it's like lighter, it lights up quicker, like lighter fluid. I was going to say, but there's no equation between lighter fluid and a body. But yeah, let me come back to respond to that. There's a professional removal and a disposition decision for your refrigerator. Dan, oh my gosh. Yeah, my refrigerator is still in my kitchen. I can't lift more than 10 pounds right now. So that to me is also like ridiculously debilitating because I can't even pull the fridge out from the wall. Like I feel stuck. So that's been really frustrating, but that's hilarious. So currently the dead fridge is in my kitchen. So back to people of a certain size, when you cremate, they need to be positioned in so that the heat source is over the main center of their body. They just have to be very specific with how the person is cremated, just because the person, even if you turn the machine off, the person can still burn because of that fat content. And you can get a grease fire happening. And this has happened and burned down crematories. So it's definitely a situation you have to be careful with. Have you had a chance to go to the War Dog Memorial? No, I have not. Have you seen the plastic covering on a person in the casket? Is there a reason or request from the family? Not sure what plastic covering, KP, that you're talking about. Have you heard of bodies splitting open who weigh 300 pounds or more? When are they splitting open? Like at the funeral home? Jody, thank you. Jody's saying everybody hit the thumbs up button. I love your videos. They're so informative and interesting. Thank you, Tim. What is a committal service? Committal service is that final service that happens at the place of committal. So it could happen at the graveside or at the crematory. Yes, I am in my new house, slowly getting settled in. So the fridge that came with the house is the one that died. It lasted about a hot minute. So all the new homeowner goodness. So do you know how many crematoriums there are in my state? No, I don't know any of those numbers, Paul. I'd have to look some of that up for you. Why can't the family own the bones after the cremation? Is it illegal? Well, they take home all the bones. That's what cremated remains are. So they own them. They take them home. Thanks, Tiffany. Hope you're doing good. Are there regular federal inspections for retorts? So the EPA monitors retorts or the emissions of how a crematory operates. And then there's also state boards that monitor them. Where do soldiers, I can't even talk today. Where do soldiers go to be prepared when they come back to the States? It depends. So a lot of people hear about Dover, and it's a big one. I did an interview with John, who is from Mortuary Affairs in the military, but we have to redo our interview. So that'll be coming up. He's based in Guam. So there are mortuary fairs across the world. So it just really depends who's going to take care of, the military when they die. But him and I had a really interesting conversation. So I can't wait to redo that at some point. Why can't they keep intact bones like the skull? It's a law. It cannot look like human bones. Does the funeral home give you everything you need to be a trade embalmer, or do you have your own things? So it depends on how much you travel and the funeral homes you run into. I don't carry any instruments or any fluid with me, but I know trained embalmers who carry everything with them and use all their own stuff and bill accordingly per that because they want to make sure they use all their own stuff. I don't travel enough and do enough of that to merit having all of my own stuff of that nature. So does a funeral home have to be present at the cemetery when remains are buried? It's a great question because this is also a state-based law type question. So in Michigan, a funeral director does need to be there for the final disposition, cemetery, and cremated remain burial at cemetery, we don't have to be. But if you go down to Indiana, you do have to have a licensed director there when you bury cremated remains. So it depends on what state you're in and what the laws are there. Does the crematorium have record of the final weight of the cremated remains? No, I don't know any that do. How long does COVID stay alive in the deceased? It has been tracked up to 90 days after death in somebody to still be active. When there are lots of flowers at a funeral, why do they take out the body first instead of the flowers? Is it a space issue? You mean when they exit at the end? It doesn't, you're taking the person out to place in the coach, so you're not going to take flowers out first. A lot of flowers may just stay there and get delivered later. I do not ever have nightmares from doing this kind of work. The saddest case I've heard of or seen, if I went down the heard of thing, I could talk about a million horrible scenarios, but we do not have continuing ed here in Michigan yet. So that they're working on that we are going to start having it be required in Michigan. I think in 2023, maybe it goes into effect. Many states do have heavy continuing ed qualifications though. Angel lust is not a deceased male lusting after angels. It's just a thing that occurs with some male cases who achieve an erection at death. Blood sometimes will settle in penile tissue. So I have never seen a man with an erection after death. Maybe engorged with edema, things like that, but it's a muscle reaction. It would be interesting, though, to see somebody who died while having sex quickly to see if a cadaveric spasm like happens in hands, like during a motorcycle accident or something, to see if that happens with the muscles in the penis. If they were, I'm just randomly spewing here. But that would be fascinating. I'm going to have to, I don't even know how to research that. I need to just ask around, I think. Oh, goodness, guys. Who knows? Keepsake jewelry, Mark's asking about. So are you talking fingerprint jewelry or cremation jewelry? Do we have caskets for people who are overweight? We have larger size caskets. You can get in varying sizes, width and length. Typically, if the width goes up, the length goes up. So, are you married? I am divorced earlier this year, so currently not married. Have you ever taken a body that you looked at and wished you just left it in the body bag? Where am I taking them? You mean like if they're at the funeral home? Hearse Fest is next weekend I believe it's on 9/11. Let me look at my calendar. I'm not going to be able to make it this year. I'm super bummed. Nope, it's on the 18th. September 18th is Hearse Fest here it's in Fowlerville, Michigan. So bummed I can't go to it, but yeah, it is what it is. Let's see. When you become an overweight family member being buried, make sure you tell the cemetery when buying the grave space. Yes, Tiffany works at a cemetery, so she comes in with a lot of really good tips and information when it comes to cemeteries. But if you have somebody that you're going to buy grave spaces and you know that that person is already larger than the average size casket, then you're going to, when they give you a grave space at the cemetery, they're going to try to give you one that is going to be accommodating. They can't just give you a general one in the middle of everywhere. They're going to need to maybe put you on an end or on a utility row that they have, or sometimes they may have specialty spaces for wider caskets and such. Sorry, mom's texting me and she's working on something for me with all the fridge and everything. Sorry, guys. I don't know if I've ever texted during my videos. All right. We're about 35 in, so I'm going to do about 2 more questions or so. Sign off. I've been playing with these the whole time because I was going to show you guys. I'm going to be posting a few new funsy merch things tomorrow. So I've got key and koozies. They're so fun. I'm just kind of obsessed with them, but I'm going to post these to my KariNorthey.com/shop. So watch for those. Probably tomorrow I'll post these, if not later tonight. So yeah, I'm going to ask, literally tomorrow, I'm going to ask people I work with if they know what angel lust is, because I have no idea. I had no idea that had a name. Is it true they use certain protective clothing to embalm and cremate? We wear gowns and masks and goggles and respirators and gloves and boots. And thank you, Jody. Yeah, moms are pretty important, especially when they're trying to do a lot for me and help me out. So where I live, funeral homes are buying graveside. Do you? They're buying grave spaces? What do you mean by that? The coroners conference in Indiana. That could be interesting. Yeah, because we don't have coroners here in Michigan. We have medical examiners only. So I'd be interested to see how the whole coroner thing worked and what kind of people are coroners. I feel like that could be a whole thing on its own. Oh, well, thank you guys for joining me. This is really fun. I forget how much fun doing live videos are until I dive in and I start doing them. So getting back in the routine of doing these weekly, getting back on a schedule. I had a full 12-hour in the office workday on Wednesday here in my home office, trying to get some things just settled, trying to get some things planned out, interviews lined up. A lot more people are asking me to be guests on podcasts. So that's definitely filling some time and everything ever in there too. Have you ever wanted to be a coroner? I feel like it would be fun, but that's not something we have here. So it's not something that really happens. What's my strangest request? Check down in the comments or the description of this video. And that's one of the more common asked questions. And it'll direct you to the video where I answer that. Can I request the eyes stay open during the viewing? You can, but it's not going to look like what you're anticipating they would look like, because they're going to change color, they're going to dry out and everything. So thank you guys so much for joining me. And I can't wait to do the next one. If you have questions, by all means, email them to me so I can touch on them on the next video. Have a great Labor Day. Bye.